All right, looks like we're live. Hey folks, how's it going? Chuck Holton here. Thank you for being a part of our first ever Newsmax YouTube live interactive news show, I guess. I don't know what you want to call this, podcast show, whatever. I am a contributor to Newsmax on a regular basis. I'm coming to you from downtown Jerusalem. That's the skyline of Jerusalem back there behind me. And I'm going to have to turn that light down a little bit because it's getting pretty bright. It's kind of getting dark back there. We decided to do this because it turns out it's pretty popular. There's a lot of people who have cut the cord, for lack of a better term. And so they just watch Netflix or they just watch, like pay on demand shows now, but when it comes to news, it's a little hard to get up to the minute news when you don't have the ability to just flip on the TV. And especially, this gives you the ability to not only do that, but to ask questions, to make comments, and to kind of interact with me as your host. And so people tend to like this platform. And because of that, we decided we'd do it on Newsmax here. So thank you for being a part of it. We're glad you're online. It would help a lot if you think this would be a good thing for Newsmax to do on a regular basis. If you'd go hit the share button and share it with your friends, share it on X, share it on Facebook, whatever. And also, if you subscribe and hit the like button, that tells YouTube that you like this kind of content, and then they'll go show this live to people who have never even seen Newsmax before, who are looking for news about the war in Israel. So I want to talk to you today about what's going on here in the war. Obviously, there are a lot of developments every day, too many for us to talk about when I do my live broadcasting. This is one of the things that really drives me crazy about the way that news is done. And I mean, I understand there's a reason for it. There's a method to their madness, so to speak. But one of the things that is really frustrating for me is that I spend all day out here gathering news, driving around, doing interviews, shooting video of what's going on the ground here during the conflict. And I get 2 minutes when I get to do a live on Newsmax. I get 2 minutes to tell you everything that's going on, and obviously that is almost impossible. It's almost impossible. So case in point, I'll just very quickly give you an anecdote about what happened yesterday. We went up to the north, and there's a lot of activity happening up there, a lot of rockets coming across from Hezbollah in Lebanon, and a lot of retaliatory strikes from Israel going back north. We also heard machine gun fire and grenade fire and stuff like that. So there are apparently skirmishes taking place back and forth across the border. That's not the kind of thing you're hearing a lot about on the mainstream media. And so while we were up there, we were in the town of Kiryat Shimona. Kiryat Shimona is the largest city in the north that has been evacuated because of the fighting. I think it had almost 40,000 people before the war started, and now there are about 5,000 people left. So everybody evacuated. As a matter of fact, I will show you, this is one of the cool things about this kind of content, is it doesn't have to be so polished. And people kind of like that, because what we're finding is that the really slick, polished, packaged news that you're getting from the major outlets, people are used to being lied to by CNN and lied to by MSNBC and all those major outlets. And so when they see that polished, packaged, highly produced news, they kind of don't trust it. But when I can show you exactly what's happening here on the ground, I can interact with you and talk back and forth with you, and I can do stuff like this. It actually helps you understand that this is real. I'm standing here live in Jerusalem, talking to you right now, wherever you are around the world. We've got 700 people watching, and we need to have a lot more than that. So go share this with your friends right now. And check this out. I'm going to show you. Let me switch cameras here. This is my my MacBook camera. I'm standing on the balcony of a 7-story building in downtown Jerusalem, and I'm just actually very close to the. I wonder if I can even show you on my phone. I'm very close to the old city. It's about a quarter mile that direction. But what I want to point out is that there's this hotel right there. Just turn the camera around a little bit. You see that building right there? That's a hotel called the Katyusha Hotel. It used to be the King Solomon in downtown Jerusalem. And that hotel, when I got here on the 9th of October last year to cover this conflict, just 2 days after the war started, I stayed in the Katyusha, and I was the only person there. Everything was shut down. There was only 1 or 2 places where you could even eat, like restaurants that were open. Everything was shut down because it was wartime footing. And hang on a second, I'm going to adjust the controls here on this. And I just do this because the sun is going down. So I need to lighten it up a little bit for you. Okay, whoa, light's too bright now. This is what happens when you don't have a cameraman. It's just me doing this all by myself. Whoa, still too bright. When it gets dark, man, that light has to go down a lot. Let's try that. Is that better? Well, okay, now we're talking. That'll be too bright here in a minute. But anyway, I was the only one staying in that hotel at the beginning of the war, and then all of a sudden it just got completely full of refugees, internally displaced people who came from the north. Most of the people that are staying in that hotel came from Kiryat Shmona, which is the town I was in yesterday. And they evacuated that 5-kilometer region all along the northern border. It's really about 80,000 people that had to evacuate, and was very, very difficult, obviously, for these people. Imagine you've got 4 kids and you get stuck in a hotel room. They only give you 1 room for your whole family. And so you and your spouse and your 4 kids are all stuck in this 1 room. Well, that'd be bad if you had to do it for a month, but how about 10.5 months? That's what they've been dealing with. They've been stuck in these rooms. They can't go back, and I'll show you exactly why. So check this out. I'm going to show you what happened to me yesterday. This is from a live broadcast I did yesterday, and we started getting hit with the red alert. The siren went off because. Well, let me show you what happened. Just in case. And I mean, there's a fine line between brave and stupid. Here we go again. Here we go again. Get down, get down. Ouch. Ow. Let's see. Nope. Probably another drone. Well, this is awkward. I'm sorry about that. So that was a little awkward right in the middle of our live hit yesterday, but we had to do that over and over and over again because Kiryat Shmona is probably the most bombed city in Israel at this point. And because it's only about 2 miles from the border, just off to the west, it is probably the most dangerous city in Israel right now because it's a large built-up area, and so Hezbollah aims at it all the time. Tisra Pinto is asking, how are the folks in Jish? I saw they got some action last night. Yeah, they did. As a matter of fact, we stayed in Jish, not last night, the night before. Jish is a little Maronite Christian village, combination. It's about 60% Christian and 40% Muslim. And it's to the west of Kiryat Shmona, about a 30-minute drive near a little place called Dalton. And that thing, that place is right next to a military area called Mount Meron. And so they get a front row seat to attacks on a regular basis. Now, Jish itself doesn't get attacked all that much because because there are Muslims living there, and I guess that what I'm told is that they've been promised by Hezbollah that Hezbollah won't target that city. I don't know if that's true or not, but I've been there many times now, and you're almost guaranteed to see some action if you go to Jish. So anyway, back to Kiryat Shimona, we went up there specifically to kind of see how things are going along the northern border. And so while we were there, we went up to right along the border. As a matter of fact, I got literally within spitting distance of the border, probably 10 feet of the fence that demarcates. There's actually a double layer fence that demarcates the border between Israel and Lebanon. And honestly, it's not that much of a fence. I mean, a big truck could probably drive right through it. Now, I've been told that there are some places along that fence where there are minefields on the north side, but I didn't see any warnings. Usually they'll put up, if there are minefields, they'll put up signs. So I don't think the place where we were had any minefields. We went to a kibbutz called Malkia, and the kibbutz is right on the borderline. It just bumps right up against the border, and just across the border from the kibbutz, there's a town inside Lebanon called Blade. I think I'm pronouncing that right. And Blade it looks like it's a fairly sizable community, maybe 5,000-6,000 residents. And it is one of the most active places where Hezbollah is firing rockets from into Kiryat Shimona, because it's just a couple miles away over the mountain. And so if you're in the kibbutz of Malkia, you can stand there and just watch rockets flying out of Blade toward Kiryat Shimona, and then watch the Iron Dome sort of take most of those rockets down. You can then see fighter aircraft from the IAF come in and drop bombs on Blade. So it's a very active area. Now, there's not really anybody left in Malkia. Malkia is a farming community. It's been there since 1948, actually early 1949, right after the creation of the State of Israel. They have hundreds of acres of orchards with apple trees and cherry trees and kiwis and all sorts of things. And they also raise cattle, they raise horses, and some other livestock as well. And normally, in regular times, there's a little hotel there, and you can go up there and you can plant a tree and you can pick apples and you can kind of help out. But not today. And the people who live in Malkia normally number about 600 folks. But obviously, being that close, they are right in the firing line, and they're in the low ground. So there's a mountain inside Lebanon just across the border, and there's a Lebanese army outpost on top of that mountain that can look down on the people of Malkia. So you're literally within range of snipers from that outpost or from Lebanon proper. The problem is, obviously you can't have your kids there. You can't go to school. You can't even, just do normal activities in Malkia. So most of the people have been evacuated. The government is paying them a stipend. They're putting them up in hotels like this one, and they've been gone for 10 and a half months. There are about 15 people who stayed behind to take care of the animals and try to just keep everything alive until this thing is over. But they're having real problems. The guy was showing me yesterday, we met this guy. He's actually a tour guide in Israel. His name is Eitan Oren, and he lives in Malkia, and he stayed behind to help out. They have several hundred cattle. Normally, right this time of year, they're giving birth to their calves. And so, they would, I don't know if you've ever raised cattle, but I did for a while. You would want the cows to give birth in the barn so that you can help them if they need help. You can, make sure that everything goes well with the birth and make sure that the calf is okay and is given, whatever care it needs. But since they don't have anybody to do that, the cows are just out wandering around in the fields and they're just dropping calves all over the place. And so the farmers have to go out on their side-by-sides every morning and look all over the place and see if they can find these calves before they get eaten by a coyote or die of dehydration. And that happens. So they had a half a dozen or more calves in the barn that they had rescued, and they're in there trying to feed them, which, if you've ever done that, that's a full-time job practically. You have to feed them, every hour or so right at the beginning. So you tried looking at your map of Israel for the location where I am. I'll try to show you on the map. Let me see if I can set that up real quick while I'm talking. I'll do a quick kind of map briefing for you if I can get that worked out. Let's see, you got to put it in studio mode and go to the map, and I just have to tell it where the map is, and the map is over here, Google Maps. Okay, and then we will transition over to the map. Okay, so here's the map. I'm in Jerusalem right now. We'll zoom out. I'm going to go up here to the border, and I'm going to show you along the border where I was. Okay, so Kiryat Shimona is right here. Okay, and this line is, I got to make sure I actually, yeah, okay. So this line is the border between Israel and Lebanon, right here. And Kiryat Shimona, right there, again, the city in the northern district of Israel on the western slopes of the Hula Valley near the Lebanese border. It was named after the 8 people, including Joseph Trumpeldor, who died in 1920 in the Battle of Tel Hai. Okay, so there you go. That's from Wikipedia. And from there, you can go over here. This is the border right here. And these are the towns that I was talking about. Now, if we go along the border, here's Malkia, right here. All right, this is Malkia. They're known for their agriculture, as I said. You can. That's a view of the border, kind of looking out toward Mount Hermon over there. That's actually looking more west, like northwest from Malkia. But they've got, these are some cherry trees and things like that. Okay, so there's Malkia. Now, this is the blue line right there. That's the border, literally right on Malkia's border. And Blida is the town I'm talking about that is firing at Kiryat Shimona all the time, right there. I guess I might not have pronounced it right, but that's what it looks like. These orchards that you see in the picture here they belong to Malkia. And then the border is just beyond those that orchard. Actually, when you're out there, you can tell where the dividing line is between Israel and Lebanon, because in Israel everything's green and in Lebanon everything's brown. They haven't done the work that Israel has done to bring the desert to life out there like they have over here. So we're watching these guys, and we're out with Eitan Oren. He's showing us let me go back to my camera here. Transition back to my camera. So hopefully it answers your question. So the people in Malkia, the 600 people that were there, they're gone. These 15 people are trying to do everything. And it was kind of sad because he took us out into the apple orchards, and the apple orchards were just loaded with apples. Absolutely. Hey, One Tired Mama, thank you for the donation. That's kind of you. The apple orchards were just full of apples, beautiful, perfect apples. And they're like, yeah, we got nobody to pick the apples. And so take all you want. So I filled up my helmet with apples and brought them home, and I've got them in here in the kitchen. So we've been eating a lot of apples lately. Now, I want to go see if there's any other questions that I missed, because, man, there's a lot of comments coming through. So let's go back here and see if I missed any. Why have you chosen Jerusalem for your state, and why not Tel Aviv? Well, Jerusalem is more centrally located, and it is a safer place. And there's a lot of cool stuff around here. I definitely prefer Jerusalem to Tel Aviv. Just personally, if I had to choose one or the other, I would choose Jerusalem for its history and for the fact that it's not as much of a big city. I really am not a big city person. Not only that, Tel Aviv gets a lot more rocket attacks, and so if I need a safe place to set up, I have like a little studio out here on the balcony of my apartment in Jerusalem. I want to be in Jerusalem for that reason, because I don't get as many rocket attacks and things like that. Now, also, I do a lot of reporting for different networks, and so the other networks wanted me here as well, so that's why. Try to answer that question as best I can. What's the best way to help the people in Israel? Well, there are a lot of charities that are doing that. Actually, I've had a bunch of people contact me and say they want to go up to Malkia and help Eitan Oren harvest his apples. He might be able to take a couple of people to do that, but not a ton of people. So I've been pointing people to kind of a generic website called serveisrael.com or .org, serveisrael.com. There's an Operation Itai that is set up to try to raise money to get Israelis the things that they need, because there are a lot of Israelis that really, if they live near the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, if they live in Judea and Samaria, they are under terrible threat. We went just a couple days ago to a Israeli community in Samaria, which is part of what the world calls the West Bank. And these guys are surrounded by like 300,000 or more angry Palestinians. They live on a mountaintop, but from their mountaintop, you can look in any direction and see Palestinian settlements all around them. And they have to listen to the mosques every day, where the imams get on the loudspeaker and start whipping up the anger of the people against the Israelis, calling for another October 7th style attack to come out of Judea and Samaria. And they don't have a fence like they had between Gaza and Israel. They don't have a wall. They don't have much in the way of IDF. There's a few, but not many. And they basically just have some orchards and vineyards between them and their Arab neighbors. So that's kind of sketchy in normal times, but these are not normal times. And so they are very worried, and what they've done is they've gone out and invested in drones that they can fly to, kind of keep an eye on everything around there. And they've caught Palestinians trying to break into their community. They have a chain link fence around their community. They've caught Arabs, throwing rocks and stuff over the chain link fence. They have, basically put together their own security force, like a community patrol on steroids. They're armed, that can act as a quick reaction force and go, to react to something like that. But honestly, if a bunch of Arabs, several hundred Arabs in that area decided they were going to overrun that community and kill all of the Jews who live there, it would be ugly. It would be ugly. And so there's been some violence in that area, a place called Jit, that's just to the west of that town, just recently. And so we went up there to talk to them about that. Suffice it to say, Serve Israel.com is trying to raise money to get those community organized security patrols, stuff like body armor, night vision, drones, and things like that. Not weapons, but just defensive things that they can use to try to make their families safer. They have to do emergency battle drills with their kids, with their families out there, and try to figure out what to do and where to go if they do get overrun, if they do have something like an October 7th. And this is scary for them. So now, let me just see if there's any other questions, because, man, we got a lot of people online. What's happening in Sidon? Okay, so this the IDF has been not waiting around to see what Hezbollah is going to do. Hezbollah has been warning the Israelis that they're going to commit some major attack in response to the targeted assassination of Fuad Shukr from was a Hezbollah leader that was killed, 2 weeks ago now. And everybody's been waiting around. They said this major attack was going to happen on Tish B'Av, which was on the 12th of August. That was, 11 days ago, 10 days ago, something like that. And it didn't happen. Hezbollah's leader, Hassan Nasrallah, has said that the waiting is part of the punishment. Well, okay, whatever, but Israel's not waiting around to see what the punishment, quote unquote, is going to be. And so they've been striking at more Hezbollah leaders wherever they can find them. And they took out a leader in Sidon. I have here on my phone, I can show you a bunch of stuff I want to get to here. And I haven't had time to load it all into my laptop, but I can do this and just show it to you this way. Let's go to my MacBook camera. This is the results of an drone strike in Sidon just today. So some Hezbollah leader met his fate today and took the room temperature challenge. Or I guess that's a little more than room temperature, isn't it? But he was deleted by the IDF. And that happened twice today. Also, in the last 48 hours, the IDF has struck 2 major arms caches, arms depots from Hezbollah inside Lebanon. And I have the footage of one of those. If I can find, I think it might be this one. Nope, that's not it. That's another one. Let's see. Nope, that's, I thought I had it. This one, there we go. This is arms cache inside Lebanon being blown up. And you see all of those fireworks going up in the sky. That's not from the IDF bomb or the IAF bomb that was dropped on them. Those are missiles cooking off that belonged to Hezbollah. And so that was a costly attack for Hezbollah. That happened twice so far in the last 2 days. So the IAF is on the offense, not just defense. And in response, Hezbollah has been firing more rockets than usual. I mean, normally when a dozen rockets come across the border from Lebanon, they call that Tuesday in northern Israel, because that's very common, at least since October 7th. But now they've been firing 50 or 60 rockets a day in response to these attacks from these targeted killings and stuff on the part of the IAF. Today, they had 50 Katyusha rockets come across from Lebanon and struck in a small town called Katzrim in northern Israel. Now, most of them were shot down by the Iron Dome system. And I was talking on a previous live about how expensive this is really for Hezbollah. They're using up a lot of their rockets, and it's not really getting them anywhere. It's not helping all that much because most of them get shot down by the Iron Dome. But a few of them got through. and one of them struck a guy's house. I do have, I think, the footage of that. No, maybe I don't. No, I'm sorry, I don't. I didn't get that loaded in. But struck a guy's house in Katzrin. He was moderately wounded. He's in stable condition at the hospital. Looks like he'll pull through. But I wanted to talk a little bit about these Katyusha rockets they're firing, because it's kind of telling, really, that Hezbollah is firing these. Katyusha rockets were invented in World War II by the Russians. There are a bunch of different variants of these rockets, but the original Katyusha rockets came in kind of a cassette. They were mounted on the back of a truck. Likely you have seen videos of these. And they could fire up to 40 of these at a time, just like shoom, 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 shoom. And they had a fairly small warhead, big enough to wreck your house, but not turn your house into a smoking crater. Not big enough to take down an apartment building or something like that, but you know, like maybe a 30-pound warhead, something like that. The later variants, the earlier ones had a pretty short range, only say up to about 5 miles, which would not, that means that whatever it was that hit Katzrin was not those older variants. Now, those things were not GPS guided. They were invented long before GPS. They were just sort of, you know, pointed at the enemy and fired. The newer variants have some inertial guidance systems, and they're longer, about 6 feet long. They carry up to like a 100-pound warhead. That's a much bigger. And they were able to extend the range out to something along the lines of 30 miles, maybe a little more. And these ones, like I say, are inertial guided. That means that they've got an error radius of about a mile. What was that? You know, when you hear things pop, especially when you came back from Kiryat Shimona yesterday, you kind of take notice. I think there was actually a car accident right there just now, down below me. No big deal. These things, I was saying the error radius is about maybe up to a mile in diameter. So if they're aiming at, you know, this point, they might hit anything within a mile of that point. So it's not likely they were aiming at that guy's house. But the thing is, Hezbollah claimed the strikes and said they were aiming at a military base. Well, there isn't a military base within a mile of that guy's house. So it's likely they were just aiming at Israel and letting fly. But as I said, Israel shot down all but just a couple. The ones that Israel doesn't shoot down normally fall in open areas, and they don't bother shooting those down because the Iron Dome system is capable of figuring out before they land if they're going to land in a built-up area or an open area. And if it's an open area, they don't even bother shooting it down. They just let it go. And so this is what we're seeing up in the north right now, is Hezbollah is stepping up the number of rockets it shoots. But, you know, you're not going to win a war shooting missiles. You can't win a war with missiles unless you have enough to completely destroy your enemy. And Hezbollah has a lot of missiles, but they don't have enough to do that. So basically what you're seeing up there is, I call it ping pong with rockets. Hezbollah shoots some, IDF shoots some, Hezbollah shoots some, the IAF comes and drops some bombs. There you go. The IDF has a lot of soldiers up there. We actually visited with some yesterday. I can't film that because I can't tell bad people things they don't need to know. But we got to sit down and actually talk to some soldiers. We brought them some falafel and handed it out, and they were very happy for that. Sat down, talked to these young guys. And I say young guys, I'm 55, and these young guys were, I mean, the tank commander was 20 years old. Everybody else pretty much was younger than that, but these guys have already seen combat in Gaza, and so they're combat proven, and they're pretty happy with their, what they're able to do. They're well trained. They've been doing basically nothing but training recently up there, and they're waiting for for the balloon to go up. They're waiting for the order to come in for them to be able to go into Lebanon. Everybody we talked to up there said, yes, we are going to have to go into Lebanon and fight Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. We're going to have to do that because these people living in this hotel over here are not going to go home until Hezbollah is significantly degraded. Now, I haven't heard lately the Israeli government say what their objective is for Hezbollah specifically. I've heard them say that they have to make northern Israel safe for the people to go home, obviously. Thank you, Captain Obvious. But they haven't said they're going to destroy Hezbollah. That would be a pretty tall order. I mean, they had a war in Lebanon, back in the 90s, that went on, 80s and 90s, went on for 18 years, and they weren't able to wipe out, well, it was the Palestinian Authority, and then that sort of evolved into the Hezbollah we see today. But they've been fighting this battle for decades. You remember the U.S. Marine barracks bombing in Beirut? That was back in, 1986? 200 and something, 41 Marines or something were killed in that bombing. Well, that was a precursor to the Hezbollah we see today. And they've been fighting this battle ever since. So this is going to go on for a while. Israel is going to have to come to some kind of decision about what they're going to do about Hezbollah, because they can't keep allowing them to fire these rockets at will across the border forever. And that's basically what's going to happen if they don't. I mean, if they've got 100,000 missiles and rockets and drones, which that's what they claim, maybe more, and they're shooting 60 of them a day, they could keep this up for a long time. That's not good. All right, so somebody is asking, what's the purpose of the foil on the railing behind you? Tell you what, B. Walker, we can talk about stuff like that. That's kind of off topic. So if you want to follow the rest of my reporting, you can go to chuckholton.com, or you can go to my YouTube channel, which is The Hot Zone with Chuck Holton, and I'm doing daily live broadcasts over there. And so the things that are sort of off topic, the things that we don't really want to get distracted with talking about here on Newsmax, I'll talk about over there. All right. And so I'm sorry, but I don't want to get too distracted. But I would like it if you would go. It'd be a help to me if you'd go over there and subscribe to the Hot Zone here on YouTube. It's just youtube.com/@Hot Zone Podcast, I think is what it is. But okay, now let's see here if we got any other questions coming up. I'm keeping an eye on the time because I don't want to go over an hour. Have you been to Jerusalem this week? I'm standing in Jerusalem, and it does not seem dangerous now, Elisheva Jones. It is pretty safe here in Jerusalem. Probably the biggest threat here in Jerusalem is not from missiles and rockets. The biggest threat here is from ramming attacks, stabbing attacks, shooting attacks from Palestinians coming across from East Jerusalem or out of the West Bank. They catch Palestinians trying to be smuggled into Jerusalem out of the West Bank almost every day. There are checkpoints around Jerusalem, so if you're driving in from Judea and Samaria, you're going to have to go through a checkpoint, and it's like going through across the border from Tijuana into San Diego. Of course, as I'm telling you, it's very safe here. We have a ambulance going by. You hear that? Just an ambulance. That happens all the time. They catch people trying to smuggle Palestinian terrorists into Jerusalem almost every day. And same way they catch drugs and stuff coming across the border into San Diego from Tijuana. And you can ask Oscar Blue Ramirez about that. So that's probably the biggest risk we face here. But I have to say, I mean, I walked into East Jerusalem today. I got one of my cell phones that had broken fixed over there. There's plenty of peaceful people over there, and the vast majority of the merchants that you find in the old city of Jerusalem, just a quarter mile that way, are Palestinian merchants, and they're just trying to make a living. A lot of them have gone out of business because there's very few tourists now here in Jerusalem. So that's the bigger problem here. Okay, so let's see here. How do people survive with loss of income for so many? Boy, that's a good question. Some people, like the people that have been evacuated, they're getting stipends from the government. It might not replace their income, but it helps them survive. Anyway, the bigger problem is that people who have businesses, you imagine if somebody's a barber or a plumber or anything like that, I mean, they're just stuck. They really, can't work. People that have businesses up in the north, some of those businesses are just going out of business because they can't continue doing their jobs up there. All right, so I'm scrolling down here through the comments. Let's see what else we got. If you have a question, it helps if you put it in all caps and put the word question and then write your question in all caps. And that way I can quickly scroll through the comments and find your questions. Let's see here. What is Bethlehem like? Well, I haven't been in there. Bethlehem is one of those A zones. I could go in there, but right now it's pretty dicey, and I just haven't had a chance to do it. I've been up to the entrance to Bethlehem, but I haven't been inside there. I may go in there before this trip is over, and if it does, I'll talk about it over on my channel. Do you think the U.S. Navy and the coalition at the sea can definitely throw a big punch to Hezbollah, Houthis, and Iraqi militias? Freddie, that's a good question. I don't think the U.S. Navy would directly attack Hezbollah if they attack Israel. I think they'll leave the kinetic response, up to Israel to do that. Now, they have been striking the Houthis with very limited results, I have to say, and that's because Yemen is basically a big dirt parking lot anyway. You could drop bombs on Yemen all day long and you'd basically just create suffering among the Yemeni people. Most of the things that are blown up there just get replaced by Iran in short order. And did you know there are actually Russian troops in Yemen that are advising the Houthis on which ships to target and where they are? This is why I have been calling what we're in right now World War III. We're already in World War III, I believe. It's just my opinion. But just because you have direct involvement of pretty much all the players. The only player that's not directly involved in this war is China, as far as major powers. And, they're just taking advantage of it by buying cheap oil from Iran and cheap natural gas from Russia and trying to make a buck off of this deal. Will the IDF embed you anytime soon? Let me tell you, One Tired Mama, I have been round and round with the IDF. I was talking to their people today. You want to know how bad it is? How little the IDF understands about how to win the information war? It's no wonder that they're getting crucified in the international press, that there's so many people, even on the right, who are confused about the ethics and the morality of this war in the United States, because the IDF is failing at getting the word out about what it's doing and how it's doing it and why, most importantly, it needs to be done. I have been offering to go into Gaza, embed with the units and show the work that they're doing, show the tremendous amount of work that they do to keep from harming civilians, to show the dangers that they face, the IDF soldiers, since day one. I've been offering to do that, and they have yet to allow me in. They've allowed a few journalists in, but they won't allow me in. They haven't let me in yet. And I asked them this trip when I got here, and the answer I got back is no journalists are being allowed into Gaza at this time. We're not allowing any journalists into Gaza at this time. So I went and started looking through the news and started finding reports from journalists, mostly Israeli journalists, from Gaza today. And I started sending them to the IDF people and saying, the press office is saying, what about this guy? He's in Gaza with your troops. And they said, well, no, that's the police. Okay, but he's in Gaza. You said nobody's allowed in. How come I can't go in? And they're going, well, we'll let you interview some of the people you've asked to interview, but you can't go into Gaza with them, even though they've invited you to go in with them. The commander of their unit says they would be happy to have you embed with their unit and go in, but we're not going to allow it. And I go, okay, well, I guess I'll interview them, at least outside of Gaza, if that's all I can get. And they say, well, yeah, but you can't show their face. And I'm like, wait a minute. These are two guys that I'm asking to interview that I've already interviewed a half a dozen times. Duran Kedar and Haim Mailspin. I've already interviewed these guys, and I showed their face every time. And they're like, well, yeah, for security reasons, you can't show their face now. I'm like, what do you mean? These guys are doing YouTube lives every day showing their face and their name and everything. And they're like, yeah, but that's just our policy. And I'm like, you know what? Forget it. I can find much more interesting things to report on without dealing with the ridiculousness coming out of the IDF press office. So, okay, that's the end of my rant on that. Sorry about that. But the answer is I'm not going to be able to get into Gaza, apparently. I've been trying, but they are just not very transparent, and that is to their detriment, okay? How long can Israel hold out financially? That is a very good question, Jane. That's a very good question. If everybody that is supporting Israel, all the countries supporting Israel, were to back out now, it would be very difficult for Israel. But I'll tell you what, this is a matter of, just like in Ukraine, this is a matter of life and death for the Israelis. And so they are going to survive some way, somehow, no matter what. If they have to issue weapons to every man, woman, and child in this country, they're going to do what they have to do to win, because they have to. They don't have another choice. Just like in Ukraine. The Ukrainians don't have another choice. And so they are going to do what they have to do to win. Question. Surely IDF, if IDF don't. Don, that's not a question. But thank you for playing. If you'd like to restate your question, I'll be happy to answer it. Don't enter Gaza, very risky. Well, that's what I do. That's my job. I'm a war correspondent, and I know when to duck, as evidenced by what I what I did yesterday when the rockets or the drones started coming in. All right, so we're coming up on an hour. We got about 10 minutes left. So if you have any further questions, ask them now, and I'll get to them in a minute. But I'm going to reiterate some of the things I've gone through. And there's one other story that hasn't been talked about, that, as far as I've seen, that I wanted to mention. An Israeli citizen, his name was Aiden Dabas, a 30-year-old Israeli from Ramat Gan, was arrested yesterday for, get this, he's a hacker, and he was arrested for aiding the Iranians with committing espionage against his own country. The guy's a traitor. Apparently, the Iranians paid him $12,000 in cryptocurrency, and for doing that, he assisted Iranians in spreading misinformation, disinformation, and basically helped Iran escalate their cyber aggression against Israel. Okay? this has not been reported, at least that I've seen in the mainstream media. An Israeli traitor being arrested, and this is what I don't get. For $12,000, I mean, heck, if I'm going to sell my soul, it's going to cost a lot more than that. If I'm going to sell out my country, I'm not going to do it for $12,000. Holy smokes. This 30-year-old kid just got arrested doing that. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention is that you probably heard about the suicide bombing that took place on, I think it was on Monday, in Tel Aviv. They've done a little more research on this. Apparently, he was trying to blow up a mosque. Oh, geez. He was trying to blow up a synagogue in Tel Aviv. And just as he was on the other side of the street, and just as he was about to do his thing, a truck passed between him and the synagogue, and the truck absorbed most of the blast. It wounded the guy driving the truck, but did not damage or kill anybody in the synagogue, thank God. But this raises some fears here in Israel about the beginning of another intifada. Back in the first couple of intifadas, the first one was like 1987 and 1993, I think. The second intifada was 2000 and 2005. There were hundreds of suicide bombings in those time frames. And a third intifada would not be a good thing. This is essentially, if you want to boil down what these two were, they're basically major uprisings by Palestinians against Israeli rule in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. It's sparked by the Palestinians' desire for independence. The problem is they don't just desire to have their own country. They've been offered their own country at least 7 times, and they keep turning it down because they're only just like now. I mean, in the ceasefire negotiations that they're going through with, the ceasefire negotiations that we've seen are basically between Benjamin Netanyahu and the United States, Qatar, and Egypt. Hamas doesn't even attend. This is what they call shuttle diplomacy. But Hamas's only demands for the ceasefire basically boil down to Israel has to lose the war. And whenever they've been offered their own state, the Palestinians have turned it down because their only demands are, Israel has to cease to exist. And that's obviously a non-starter for Israelis. If the Palestinians were ever to say, okay, look, we just want a place to call our own, to have our own country, and we promise we'll leave you guys alone. You stay in Israel, and you leave you leave us alone, and we'll leave you alone. Just give us our own country, and we'll accept the 2-state solution as it's been offered many times before. Maybe it would work. But every time it's been offered, the Palestinians have turned that down. They won't accept a 2-state solution. They want a 1-state solution. They want it all. And that's a non-starter for the Israelis. So that's basically, you can sum up where the ceasefire negotiations are now. Yahya Sinwar realizes that Israel, their stated goal for the war in Gaza is to kill Yahya Sinwar. I mean, he has to die for this to be over. And his qualification for the ceasefire agreement is, I have to be able to survive, not only survive, but move to Qatar and live my life out as one of those billionaires over there. And you guys have to rebuild Gaza. So a couple days ago, Anthony Blinken came to Israel and sat down with Netanyahu. Every time he's come, he doesn't go talk to Hamas. He just talks to Netanyahu and puts pressure on Israel to get Israel to basically lose the war. That's, losing the war means trying to do what the Biden administration did in Afghanistan. It's like the Biden administration really believes that the best possible way to put an end to a war is just to declare it to be stopped and just go home. Don't even take your toys and go home. Leave your toys, give them to the enemy, and then just walk away. That's what we did in September, on August 30th, August 30th, 2001. We just left $86 billion behind and went home. Well, now the Biden administration is saying, that's the best idea for you guys, Israel. We really need this war to be wrapped up because we got an election to win, and we want to be able to campaign on the fact that we ended the war in Gaza. And so you guys need to wrap this up. So you have to accept this ceasefire. And Israel's like, your ceasefire is telling us to lose. And Blinken's like, yeah, that's how we did it in Afghanistan. That's the way you do it. You just lose. You just go home. And Israel's like, yeah, that doesn't work for us. And so Blinken came back and said, well, how about a bridging proposal? And they're like, what do you mean bridging proposal? Well, we want you to lose and you want to not lose. So there's a gap here. So how about you halfway lose and then we'll try to get Hamas to come toward. And then they step out of the meeting and Blinken says, they accepted the proposal. And Netanyahu comes out of the meeting and goes, wait a minute, we didn't exactly accept that proposal. Actually, our conditions have not changed a whole lot. So this is where they stand on the ceasefire negotiations. And I want to point one thing out. I wish I had the soundbite from this, but as I was watching the President Biden's speech from the Democratic National Convention this morning, I noticed something when he talked about the ceasefire deal that he has been pushing Israel to accept. When he came out and first announced this deal a couple of weeks ago, he said, this is Israel's idea. Israel came up with this ceasefire solution, and I'm announcing it. And Israel's like, wait a minute, what we did what? And Joe Biden came out and said, this is Israel's idea, and they'd better accept this deal. It was like, wait a minute, if it was Israel's idea, you would expect that Israel would accept it. So he claimed it was theirs, and then he threatened them if they didn't accept it. So they've been pushing and pushing and pushing for Israel to accept this deal, and Israel is like, no, that's not going to work for us. Hamas has said, we'll accept that deal. That's pretty good for us. Well, at the Democratic National Convention last night, when Biden spoke on this topic, he literally came out and said, I wrote this peace deal. He said he wrote it. Now, I don't know how many people believe that Biden wrote anything, but he did claim that it came from his administration. And so that actually contradicts what Biden himself said when he first announced this peace deal 2 weeks ago. There is something you're not going to hear from the mainstream media, folks, and that's what we're trying to do. I hope you've enjoyed this. We want to answer your questions as best we can, but we got to go, so you can. I'll go over on my channel, The Hot Zone with Chuck Holton, and answer any other questions you have. But I really appreciate you watching this first ever interactive live news update from Israel with me, your host, Chuck Holton, here on the Newsmax channel. I hope that you will like and subscribe to Newsmax TV and make a comment. Tell them whether or not you enjoyed this, because hopefully we'll be able to do it again soon. So God bless you. Thank you for watching. And again, we'll see you hopefully shortly on another one of these very soon.